ni ceceni ya Inooro TV.
Nwega muno ni undu wa guthii na mbere guikarania na ithwe thiini wa session ino ya Inooro TV. Gaka ni kahinda ga tabarira ya kimuri no mbere gutwarite munoronge wa studio reke nyambe guthomere mohoro maitu na njira nguhi. Ritwa riakwa ni Njoroge wa Githĩnji. Aikari aitura ria Kirima guku ni gicigo-ini kia ubunge gia Kajiado ya Rugogo kaunti-ini ya Kajiado ni marateta kumana na guthuka gwa barabara ya itura riao iria niyo yerekeire ringiriro-ini ria irima cia Ngong'u. Maraiga thengia ya gukorwo na thirikari ni thondekaga mbeca nyingi kumana na ugendi irima-ini ici mationete muthenya ona umwe gicunji kia mbeca ici gicokio na thutha guthondeka barabara ino ya riu iyurite marima na rukungu ruingi na riria kwaura ndegerekaga ni undu wa ndoro. Uhoro turaheo ni mwandiki wa mohoro gwitwo Wangui wa Mwangi.
Barabara ĩno ya ũraihu wa kilomita 2 kuma taũni-inĩ ya Ngong'u nĩ ũrĩingĩrĩro rĩa irĩma cia Ngong'u iria nĩ kĩgucĩrĩrio kĩnene kĩa agendi kuma gũkũ bũrũri-inĩ na nja ya bũrũri na nĩyo rĩu ĩtuĩkĩte maithori kũrĩ aikari a itũra rĩa Kĩrĩma kũrĩa hĩtũkĩire.
Barabara ĩno nĩ ithuĩ tũthondekete kuma hingo ya Saitoti, tũgĩthondeka na mbeca cia CDF, tũkĩmĩ-open, tũkĩmĩthondeka ĩgĩtuĩka barabara njega. Rĩrĩa Kenjeni yacokire gĩũke gĩthũkia, Kenjeni tukiaria nao magithondeka kuma hindi yo ndire yacoka kugutio ni mundu ungi.
Ithuĩ tutihuraga nguo tukanika ni undu wa rukungu. Ciana citu igithie cukuru no tuciumagaririe na iratu igiri kwa satari kwaura tutiwe tugwika atia.
Hamwe na ugendi irima-inĩ ici cia Ngong'u no kũrĩ na ceceni ingĩ cia bata ta iria ya mitambo ya guthondeka thitima cia ruhuho ya kambuni ya Kengen. Aikari makĩũria kĩrĩa kĩngĩtũma thirikari ĩrekererie barabara ĩno ĩikare na thoni ta ici.
Forest CSR ikaga haha ithuĩ tuonaga magĩthiĩ makarogota mbeca harĩa magoka magaikũrũka ona ta rĩu igĩkinya 6 haha nĩ ũkuona Land Rover yao yambatĩte harĩa. Every weekend andu aria makoragwo mambatite haha ona ndigwiciria barabara ĩrĩa main one ya Ngong'u nĩ koragwo na transport heavy ta barabara gaka.
Ũngĩka mathabu ya mahĩndĩ ya corona kĩrĩma gĩkĩ gĩangĩraga ngari millions of millions kinya magekĩra jam kuma police station kinya harĩa mararĩhĩria mbia icio no hatirĩ ritani matũneaga kana gũtwĩra way forward ya ũhoro wa barabara ĩrĩkũ ĩno na nĩo machangĩte mũno barabara ĩno gũthũka tondũ nĩ magĩgũkorwo makĩmĩ-maintain na mbia icio moyaga handũ hau.
Kuma rũhonge rwa mĩtitũ kambuni ya Kengen o nginya atongoria arĩa athure gũtirĩ wabici ya aikari a itũra rĩrĩ mataringaringĩte magĩetha ũteithio no kĩrĩa matũrĩire nĩ ciĩranĩro itarahinga.
Na ngina idadi ya watalii arĩa marakoragwo magĩcera irĩma-inĩ cia Ngong'u nĩ macokete thĩ na namba he namba ĩrĩa ĩrakoragwo gũkũ tondũ matirenda gũthũkangia ngari ciao ciroka cigathũkangira gũkũ. Afitha mũrũgamĩrĩri wa ceceni ya rũhonge rwa mĩtitũ gũkũ irĩma-inĩ ici cia Ngong'u augĩte ona makĩũnganagia mbeca matirĩ na hinya wa gũthondeka barabara ĩno ĩmwe kwa ĩmwe no akauga nĩ ũhoro ũrĩ mũbango-inĩ.
Na nĩ twĩkĩte what we call budgeting ya bara ici bara ĩno ya kũingĩra Ngong'u tiga tu no ũrĩa allocation ndĩrĩ yambiria kũ-flow but the pipeline nĩ gũthondekwo nĩ KFS after agreement na rural roads.
Aikari a gũkũ Kĩrĩma maugĩte ikinya rĩa naihenya rĩngĩaga kuoyo nĩ meharĩirie kuoya mathĩgĩ ona kana kũhinga barabara ĩno biũ wakorwo gwĩkaguo nĩkuo gũgũtũma makaya mao maiguo.
Nĩ tũkwenja mĩtaro kana tũgũithie mĩtĩ nĩ tũkaĩte mĩaka mĩingĩ mũno athuri aitũ matonyete maobici mothe gũtirĩ obici matathiĩte rĩu nĩ tũkinyĩte mũico.
Mũingĩ ũngiuga nĩ wa block bara ĩno ona KFS nĩ kũ lose revenue because we collect money tondũ ĩno nĩyo main gate itũ ya kũingĩra na ku-access forest.
Guoya mũnene ũrĩa marĩ naguo nĩ kũrĩa marĩgeraga wakorwo mbura ĩrĩa ĩrathĩtwo kura ya munĩko ĩgũkorerera barabara ĩno ĩtathondeketwo. Ngĩribotera Inooro TV rĩtwa rĩakwa nĩ Wangui wa Mwangi.
Nwega muno Wangui wa Mwangi nĩ ũndũ wa riboti ĩyo yaku. Mũnini wa President Rigathi Gachagua nĩ agĩte na mweke wa kunanĩra njũng'wa na aikari a Mathira icera-inĩ rĩake mwena ũcio kũmatha kĩrathimo na oho nĩ acereire tatawe. Gachagua augite Gladys Gathoni uria ni uri na ukuru wa miaka 95 ni wa mwanya muno hariwe na nota nyina mumuciari. Wangari Maria wa Muigana ni mwandiki wa mohoro na no haririye riboti ino.
Ari tauri okoretwo uri mutugo wa keriri ari Mathira county-ini ya Nyeri o ringi munini wa President Rigathi Gachagua ni athiete icora kana woko ya kunogora mwiri agituikania matura matiganite mwena wa Mathira. Makiria na kunogora mwiri munini wa President akoretwo akihuthira icora riri kwaraniria na muingi na njira ya hakuhi, amwe ao aria makuranire nake magitereta cigie unyinyi na withi wao. Na wangi makihuthira mweke uyu kwiturura mathina maria mari namo. Oho Rigathi Gachagua ni ageneire tatawe Gladys Gathoni mutumia wa ukuru wa miaka 95 icera-ini riria atariirie taria kumatha kirathimo. Atekuhitha gikeno giake tatawe Rigathi akimwamukira na gikeno na kumutuga na ngaguro na makagia na mweke wa kuria kirira. Gerifotera Inooro TV Getu Wangari Maria wa Muigana.
Wangari Maria wa Muigana ni undu wa riboti iyo yaku. Muingi na atongoria kuma Kangema ni matetete kana magatetia Ministerial ya Githomo ni koga kwambatiria gikiro thukuru wa kothi cia moko wa micuki nginyagia gikiro kia national. Mekigeno ni imwe ya thukuru iria cikoretwo ciekuranire hari kuheana morutani kuri mbeu njithi. Magwite thukuru uyu uri na mugunda munene na aruto aige kuma kona ciothe cia bururi na uguo ni wabatie kwambatirio ikiro riwa ikari makihoya president na minister wa githomo kuingirira na gutirira thukuru uyu ni wambatirio ikiro ta uria kweranirwo. Marito mahoro kuma mwena ucio wa Murang'a ni Victor Kinuthia na no ri no horo cio makiria.
Miaka makiria ma 60 kuma cukuru uyu wa kothi cia moko wa micuki wa mbiriria. Aciari arutwo na muingi makiuga makoretwo na itanya ati cukuru uyu ni ukwambatirio ikiro cia kibururi niyo national.
Tuko na watoto kutoka Kenya mzima. Turoria kiuria kimwe. Ithui turari na high hopes. Ati micuki technical ni imwe ya cukuru iria guconsidered number 1 in Kenya gutuika National Polytechnic. Riu twagite kumiona ati ni imwe ya iria irathondekirwo ni thirikari tuike National Polytechnic no tukaigua uru.
Ithui ta Kangema twina Micuki Technical Institute. Micuki Technical Institute ori hana tha ici ikoragwo ihana national tondu ina ciana nginya ciumite Githii.
No riu magitetia Ministry ya Githomo ni kwaga kwambatiria cukuru uyu gikiro. Mubunge wa Kangema Peter Kihungi akiuga cukuru uyu wina mugunda munene na macini cia guthoma nyingi gukira cukuru imwe cia kothi cia moko.
Nairobi Technical ina eka 10. Mombasa Technical ina eka 8. Micuki Technical ina eka 7.5 na bado he mugunda turongerirwo eka 7 mweno wa G3 ikorwo ipati ya constituency ya Micuki. Koguo icio ya mugunda tandu Kangema tutingitikira gwitikira tutingitikira kuiguithio nayo.
Muingi uria umite matura maria makuhiriirie cukuru uyu ugite ukoretwo cangeire hanene hari gukura kwa utonga wa kaunti ino makiria kumana na namba nene ya arutwo.
Ikoretwo igiteithia muno hari uhoro wa gukuria itura riri ria guku Karugia na Mugurura Kangema, especially akoni uhoro wa mawira kwi andu ingi muno makiarikitwo guku mawira thiini wa cukuru ino akoni guthambia akoni kuruga akoni uhoro wa gugithomithia nginya ciana na akoni uhoro wa biashara
ikagia na arutwo aingi tona bieta arutwo aigana ota anini mo tata tugu nige ico gitweka riu igithiete kage na population nene igikinyitie andu 5,000.
Riu marahoya President William Ruto na munini wake Rigathi Gachagua hamwe na minister wa githomo kuingirira na gutigirira cukuru uyu no wambatirio ikiro niguo heane mathomo ma ndanduku makiria.
Onyende kwira President witu njire deputy witu na njire Macogu na njire thirikari ire hau ati thiini wa Murang'a county Micuki Technical niyo thukuru iria yagire kurevitwo to national level. Thukuru ya Kigumo Technical irakirwo ni Micuki Technical niwe koretwo kimirũgamirira staff nginya kwambiriria. Mukorwa-ini irakirwo ni Mĩcuki tekniko
na no twende kwĩra nginya kaunti ya Murang'a atĩ ona igoti rĩrĩa mũthũkũmaga gũkũ andũ aya othe maigĩte biacara itũra rĩrĩ rĩothe nĩ rĩa itũra rĩa biacara.
Iribotera Inooro TV kuma Kangema kaunti ya Murang'a, rĩtwa rĩakwa nĩ Victor Kenothia.
Muno Victor Kenothia nĩ ũndũ wa riboti yaku, na riboti iyo yaku nĩyo yatũtirĩra mohoro maitũ na njĩra nguhĩ ma ithaa rĩrĩ rĩa thaa ithatũ. Gũrĩ kwa mohoro mangĩ na njĩra nguhĩ kũmamũkĩra wona ciĩhanda thaa ithano cia rũcinĩ. Aka nĩ kahinda kega mũno ga tabarĩra ya Kĩmũrĩ, na tabarĩra ya Kĩmũrĩ nĩ hĩndĩ ĩrambĩrĩria na mũndũ ũrĩa gũkorwo agĩtereba tabarĩra ya mũthenya wa ũmũthĩ ti ũngĩ nĩ mũndũ ũgwĩtwo Nderitu Waihũra. Na Nderitu Waihũra nĩ ndakena mũno nĩ ũndũ wa kuona nĩ ũrĩkĩtie gũkinya gũkũ thĩinĩ wa studio. Kũhana atĩa rũcinĩ rũrũ?
Nĩ kwega mũno Njoroge wa Gĩthĩnji.
Nĩguo
ũrĩ oho?
Nĩguo na ndakena mũno. Na ndĩramenya andũ a kũndũ gwĩtagwo Ndinda, Mũmũi, Macinarĩ, Rironi, Manunga, macio nĩ marĩtũra ma mũgeni ũmwe mwĩnake gũkũ thĩinĩ wa studio kũmenya matũra mo. Ndĩragereire barabara na matũra mau mũthenya wa ira, na ndĩrona barabara ĩyo yakĩtwo yũkĩte gũka wega mũno kuma harĩa Karaũngĩ gakinya harĩa Njabi-inĩ rĩ. Barabara ĩyo nĩ nywe.
Gũtuĩkaga ngavana wothe wa Nyandarũa ahũragwo na bara.
Barabara ĩyo nĩ njega.
Na nĩ ndĩyũragia tondũ mambĩrĩrie gũthurana hĩndĩ ya independence rĩ, guokire atĩa gũkĩaga gwakwo bara.
Nĩguo reke ngũtigĩre kĩharo nĩgetha ũnjokerie mwaro wona ciĩhanda thaa ithano.
Na rĩu kuma ũkĩnganĩrie Kamau mwĩre rĩu ndĩna gĩkĩro kĩngĩ, rĩu akani adressaga either ta gavana, ta waziri kana mũndũ ũngĩrũgamĩrĩra maũndũ marĩa matũrigicĩirie thĩinĩ wa Africa.
Nĩguo rĩu kwenda nginyie nĩ ũranengera kĩndũ gĩa gũthiĩ to mũndũ ũrũme ndagĩthiĩ kana mũthuri ndagĩthiĩ ya moko matheri.
Nĩ ngũgũtũma no mũthenya, na tondũ ndeto cio ndĩrenda ciĩkuo na gĩtĩo rĩ, nĩ ngwetha thenge ya horohio nĩguo karũcinĩ rĩ ndakangwetage na njĩra ya kũhũthia kũnyararithia. Nĩ ahũrithĩtio mũno kũrĩ thũ ciakwa.
Thengi mũno kĩharo nĩ kĩanyu mwĩna mweciwa Njoroge wa Ciani, my friend.
Gũkũ Cieni kwĩna kũndũ gwĩtagwo Baguret, gwĩ kũndũ gwĩtagwo Kakuret, nĩ njũĩ nĩ gũkorwo agĩtũmenyithia na tũgakĩambĩrĩria nĩ kiugo kĩa Mwathani. Thimo 17 kamũhari 22, thimo 17 22 roga ngoro njanjamũku ĩtũmaga mũndũ aikare arĩ mũkenu, ihoru nĩ kũhinyaria rĩhinyaragia mũndũ. Thimo 17 kamũhari 22, ngoro njanjamũku ĩtũmaga mũndũ aikare arĩ mũkenu, ihoru nĩ kũhinyaria rĩhinyaragia mũndũ. Mheshimiwa wanyita kĩ hau?
Kenya bengeithie eroreri a Kĩmũrĩ University, aikaria Nyandarũa, Kĩbĩbĩri na East Africa kana jumuiya yothe na makĩria Africa tũkĩmĩhost mũthenya wa ũmũthĩ. Kiugo kĩu ngwĩciria hihi gĩtwaranĩte wega tondũ mũthenya wa ira nĩ tũronire andũ ngoro cia ciaikara ũguo wauga na marahana ta mahinyara
ndakwĩra
thutha wa gũkorwo mena merĩgĩrĩro magũkorwo magĩcindana mũbira ũrĩa ũrarĩ kuo mũthenya wa ira na maigĩrĩire ngiri 40 metha-inĩ na tũgĩthiathia marahana ta mangĩhota. Ndĩrona makĩanji kwandĩka kahinda gecohe mareheria mandĩko na nĩ makĩraire na ihoru mũno, makĩria seneta witũ Methu na gĩkundi gĩake gĩothe Ndindi Nyoro na arĩa othe maracangiriaga magĩtwĩrĩte nĩo megũtũnyoroca andũ a Seno.
Nĩ ũndũ mwega mũno, karibu sana Mheshimiwa Wanjikũ wa Mũhĩa, nĩwe mũmbunge wa kũrĩ Kĩbĩbĩri ĩrigainie na Abadeas.
Kĩbĩbĩri tũrigainie na Abadea na no njuge nĩ ithuĩ twĩ gatagatĩ wa Nyandarũa. Koguo ngĩthi mwena ũyũ nĩ Karau na mwena ũyũ nĩ Kĩnangobu, mwena ũyũ nĩ Ndaragwa na mwena ũyũ nĩ Girigiri na Abadea gĩcigo kĩega Kĩbĩbĩri. Ona nĩ twĩrĩgĩrĩire gwaka caves ũndũ tũrĩmũrĩhagia mugatiga kuma Nairobi gũka gũtembea Abadea ũguo bũrĩ mũgacoka mũkainũka. Turenda gwĩkĩra ihingo mũkariha mũgathi mũgakĩona nyamũ na kariera kega ona mbura ĩkamurĩra na mũgagĩcoka na waru na minji na karati.
Thengia mũno. Ningĩ Mheshimiwa Njoroge wa Ciani uma Kieni.
Hi Timothy. Yes, ndoma Kieni.
Na wewe wajeta Timothy nĩ ũtũmaga njirikana kwera kwa nyina timu.
Exactly.
Na timu wana shuga goku.
Nĩ tũhiki. Nĩ andũ ajiai.
No anĩrĩra mĩato. No karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Thank you. Wa mbere ũhe kanya gaka ngeithie eroreri arĩa maratwĩrorera kĩroko kĩa ũmũthĩ. Ngwĩre nĩ wekaga nĩ kũndehera mentor wakwa ndakinya bunge ndakorire Mheshimiwa Wanjikũ kijira ngukunyita guoko na in a week or 2 weeks ni gukorwo amenya maundu na maatho ma bunge thengi muno Wanjiko once again na ni ndu akinyitire mundu ogwo tu in 2 weeks time ri ndakwirite nyuma kuo na ndeko thank you so much for your kindness ningi twagicoka twagicemania muthi wagweta maritwa ma githungu ndarigwo atiriri kai kieni urakimenya muno kai wina muhanga uriko wa kieni however uririkana kwina metal gate nikio twita na gikugia chuma calculate no ritwa ria githungu bagret ni ritwa ria githungu college station niyo itago karicheni embaringo marita mothe mathiete marehete githungu ndikigeithie roreri na andu amatura mau na kini giothe handu kiaruma keni ni twaikarire nao muno na twathi guikara nao tondu bunge twika recess kanini na gothe ndiragatũmĩrĩire kĩeni nginya hau tũkinyĩte ndigatũmĩrĩire kĩeni tũtirikanitie koguo ona tuma haha ndi tũgũcoka kĩeni ngũkĩtio wĩra ũyũ wa kũgeithia eroreri na ndimere maũndũ mamwe marĩa tũreka kĩeni nĩgetha ona kũrĩa itũra rĩrĩa itakinyĩte kĩeni rĩ mamenye matitiganĩirio no tũreharĩria ũhoro wa El Nino ĩratuĩka it's for you it is coming koguo twĩrane maũndũ merĩ matatũ ũguo makumera uria turenda mehariria maitu ma El Nino maikare niturenda kwaria watuhe kanya nitukwaria horo wa githomo ni ihinda riri ni tamu ya gatatu niyo turathie kigeranio kia KIPSEA class 6 tuthie kigeranio kia form 4 na tuthie kigeranio kia class 8 icio ciothe irekirwo kieni no tureka kigeranio kia bata muno tikana gya kawaida gitire gya kwa ringi ni ithuwa mbere ndirichiria ni thini wa Kenya tondu tugwika kigeranio gya short courses turekirio ni Nyeri National Polytechnic aruto akwa ni mathiete wega muno ndakwirire twina arutwo 1505 ona no tukugerio mbere ya mwisho wa mwaka na ona no ngumendiriria twagikinya hau ni tukwira na uria tumehariria makigeranio kiu makihana tutikire na urukieni kariyo ni gacokire o uria kari twahurirwo muno ni ba ona kororiwa no ringiru ni riwa riratuthumbura ri mbere ya riwa gwambire gugiuka ba fruits ikiringa kieni mimera itwe na nyeki na kila kitu igicoka thereafter mbura agicokera kifil koguo tucokete haria twari haria twahoyaga irio na and once again thank you muno ni ndirikana kwani ni twaheirie andu 17,000 irio na ndukajire ni twachindire
mathakara rio mera mati
haira ndo 70,000 single-handedly no ni ndakiteithiririo ni Inooro ni kaikono ni mokie kuna Wanjiko wa Gitonga na aria angi mugiuka tukihoya irio diriganagirwo nginya ni andu aria matuheire irio we had so many well wishes na tukihe andu acio irio
asante sana tukiaria maundu thegio tuna mheshimiwa Wanjiko amwe kuma kura kibibira na mheshimiwa Njorage Wainaina niwe cieni kuma kuria
twari ni rio riraria cieni ona president wa Kenya jitaga cieni
by the way nura ma host yate Saturday
ni Saturday na
tutire na mbere Saturday
no kwendwo ni ngai na kwendwo ni president tondu ni gutikawaida president yoke constituency imwe maita meri thino wa mweri umwe
ne muthuri gucha ne
twathie igongona ria Kamau Atoto
PS wa energy
twiteire kamuchere kanyama tondu ona ithuĩ no tũkĩrĩ oho nĩ tũrenda kũigua nĩ tũrakũngũĩra na tũcokerie president ngatho na deputy nĩ ũndũ wa gũkĩhe mwanake ũcio wa gwitũ wĩra koguo twĩna gĩkeno kĩnene mũno host president 2 times inside 1 month
no kĩra Alex atũrĩre agakĩnjĩtaga
by the way nona gathitima karĩa gaku na nĩ ngũkũnengereria kandi ũmũthĩ ngũraga ngũtũmĩire VIP card
mheshimiwa ni kũneneha no kũnene transformer umire Nairobi yandĩkĩtwo rĩtwa rĩakwa so nyingĩcio kaikaiyo
ndarĩ na itemi nene mũno reke tuge hau Wachira arĩ na itemi nene mũno tondũ wahoya rĩ na nĩ we ndaikirie ngĩmwĩra Wachira haha he handũ harahĩtana na he's a good man he's a very good man tutikarire atatũtũmĩire transformer wajitagira ndĩ Mombatha na ngĩkinya Voi transformer nderagwo nĩ irekĩrwo gwa
neo nĩ racinĩrĩirwo na twara kwira transformer icio the umwire transformer icio the iraheano igacinirerwo
ni undu wa icia
tondu kwina ici
kinai
na maroka makamunya
magiro hianda magicunga
yoka heano ona cia ntwo ni muikirio kwa nyunya ndaro
no ithuĩ nĩ tũranyitire mũici niĩ no ndamerĩte tũmũnyite ngono thikũ 40 ndamerire no na itinakinya ndamerire ici aya nĩ tũkũmũnyita
maratũmerire ke morogi kana bori
ona reke tuge andũ nĩ tũmasensitizĩte na nĩ tũkenete mũno nĩ macibu maitũ tarĩ cibu mangirĩti nĩ ũratongoririe nyanake cia hau magomano na muthuri ucio nĩ arakĩhũrirwo wega na ndarĩ mwanake
anarayaga athiĩ
na nĩ ũrona na indo bange wega tho indo cia kũrũkia mikanda ya kũhamba ngwĩciria na mararĩ aingĩ amwe marora na no tũrakĩrĩgĩra nĩ egũgĩtuonia kũrĩa megũgĩthi na hau ha thitima ngiuga nĩ ũhoro wa kĩeha na transform na teo yaku cieni kuona nĩ karũgendo athiangĩte kwa Alex Mary matatũ rĩu ũrakora ĩno nĩ aiywo ũrĩa tũrauga atĩ lighting up kipipiri na kĩongia akauga shutting up kipipiri agoka agithimaga uhoro cio wa transformer ni uhoro muritu muno no nyingi irakĩiywo iria ciagĩkĩrĩtwo tene tondu na cicio cia tene ciagĩkĩrĩtwo bara-inĩ gũtirĩ na andũ tinjinĩrĩre currently ona mũcemanio twĩrĩga gũkorwo na Alex nĩ tweranire nĩ cithi igũrũ biũ ciĩkĩrwo igũrũ biũ icoke nĩ maicinĩrĩrwo no nĩ ndĩraigua kwĩna technology ya transformer iria ikuo thaa ici he kĩndũ itarĩ icio cia tene ciarĩ ndĩraigua tarĩ kĩndũ ta copper koguo rĩu ona matirenda kũiya ici cia thaa ici marenda icio cia tene no ũkĩimagine itũra tarĩ akwa rĩa marewa rĩokĩte rĩkaiywo rĩna andũ ngiri mũhecimua wa kũrĩa kangĩmona nĩ kwahikanĩtio kagothoni hakuhĩ aroke gũkora thoni yake na nduma koguo nĩ ũhoro mũru mũno ũcio wa transformer na ngiuge andũ aya nĩ mandĩkĩirwo mwanake mwega mũno Alex nĩ mwanake ũronekana nĩ ekũruta wĩra ambunge a Nyandarua nĩ tũramũcereire tũrakĩmwĩra bwana Alex kwĩ data yaheanĩtwo thirikari ya hau kabere data ĩyo yarĩ fake yaugaga Nyandarua tĩ connected almost 80% na Nyandarua nĩ the least connected harĩ gĩcigo kĩa Mount Kenya nduma nĩ Nyandarua koguo ithuĩ nĩ tũrabatara kĩndũ gĩgwĩtwo affirmative action na nĩ tũrakĩaria ndereti no irathi na mbere ona nĩ tũramĩkinyirie kwĩ president hĩndĩ ararĩ Kakamega nĩ aretire atongoria Nyandarua na tũrakĩmwĩra no twende kũheo affirmative fund mbeca shirin fence ũguo cirwo nĩ cia Nyandarua cia thitima tondu ona andũ nĩ maratũria nĩ mũrenda kũrehera kĩrĩa TVET mwĩtwĩkĩre computer wodi nĩ mũrauga computer mũ connect nake no horo wa thitima kana nduma no gũgĩcokia andũ na thutha
thank you na no tũkwaria ũhoro wĩgiĩ inua jamii kwĩna kampeni ĩrathiĩ na mbere harĩ thikũ 15 harĩa andũ arĩa makinyĩtie mĩaka 70 nĩ mũgũkorwo mũgĩtũmenyithia maũndũ macio ningĩ tũkũrora ũhoro wĩgiĩ population na nĩ njũĩ Brendan ũtonye thĩinĩ wa YouTube ũnjethere irebeta rĩa ihĩ cia watuka ihĩ cia watuka ũtonye thĩinĩ wa YouTube ũnjethere tondũ ndĩramakate cukuru ĩyo nĩyo twakoragwo tũgĩcindana nayo atĩ rĩu high school ng'ima ĩna ciana 100 na maradimĩtie ciana 10
form 1
cukuru
ndakorire Friday
cukuru twaiguaga tũkamĩtigĩra tukura niki kirathi na mbere horo igi family plan niguo na mukiuga ni mara register andũ aya 70 inwa jamii ina population ino ihana atia gucia macio maundu tukurora no horo igi miario ni ragithie na mbere ona ningi tukwaria no maria maturigiceirie na ndamenyithio ati president ni arikitie gwikinyia kuria KICC Africa Climate Summit ira rathie na mbere President Dr. William Samoei Ruto na ningi deputy president Rigiji Rigathi wa Gachagua nake ari okuo na rĩrĩa president agukorwo akiarĩria muingi kana kĩgomano gĩkĩ no ngirora thĩinĩ wa TV yaku nĩ kuona kĩgomano kĩu nĩkĩo kĩragĩthiĩ na mbere kũrĩa KICC nĩ kĩgomano kĩa marĩa matũrigicĩirie na gĩthweri tũramĩta tabia inchi kĩarutaga mũthuri nyenda gaikara gatairi ni
tabia inchi
ni horege ni climate change idare hado ndagera ire oro uguo rire ndakirikuo na muhechimwa teke tukire terere ira turari horo wingi andu 70 ito maita maingi turaria maundu maingi muno guku kurathi nambe niki kirathi nambe ira kurauga inua jamii ni ndu ino eretwo
inua jamii ni mubango wa thirikari na wanakorwo ho no hihi nduri wekwo sensitization tere ikuo thaa ici na mubango no akwandikithia andu makinyite miaka 70 na guthi na iguru nigetha mahote gukorwo me beneficiary a mbeca iria iheanagwo 2,000 o mweri, na oho hena mubango wa andu a mawathe maretwo severe disability to no ugikorwo kiri na wathe ringi wa karana no wikire maundu. Oho hena mubango wa andu aria metagwo orphans kana aria matari aciari na makiri na kubatara uteithio. Ni njira imwe ya thirikari kuoya data ya bururi ya andu acio akuru nigetha mateithike, na mubango uyu ni twauruguririe constituency mwanya mwanya muthenya wa mweri 1 niyo nani ni ndaruguririe kuria Miharati. Ona ungirora ng'enda cia mothiu ni wonire ni twari na andu makiria 500 andu akuru mokite nigetha meyandikithie. Mubango uyu andu meyandikithitie ngwirigirira 2006 koguo ngigitara ihinda riu mundu wa kiri miaka 60 ni agikinyiri na agikira, na no wega andu magagithii magikagirwo renewal tondu ona thaa ici ni kuga next year ni gugakorwo angi a miaka 70. Thirikari ni irerigirira muthenya umwe na ithu tuhane ta mabururi ma nanja uria muiguaga mundu toyaga pension ni ekuheo kanyamu. Koguo mubango uyu mundu utaraheo pension, utare waruta mwarimu, fitinary, shifu, acio nio mareyandikithia to ndari kanyamu onaga. Na njuge no mubango mwega na thirikari no ya Kenya Kwanza ni igeretie ni kurikana tugithi kurikia gitina kia muheshimiwa Uhuru ni kwari na thiri wa mieri 10 andu matarihitwo. Thirikari no yaingirwo na igikayaga kuri ona mathina ni yarihire mbeca o bilioni ciganona na o mundu akirihwo 8,800 na no ngwire ndina marwa ona ni njui muheshimiwa Cieni ni aronire twatumirwo muthenya wa iyo ni karani ka bunge ati mbia cia mweri wa 8 cia andu acio ni irarekereirio. Iyo ni rekodi hari thirikari itu ya Kenya Kwanza.
Koguo mutie na thire.
Riu tutire na thire turari ha mbere. Riu tikari mekwandikithio na makiandikithio ni megukiamba gukaguo tondu no ukiandikithio na ringi data ndiuma njega tutikumera ati mwisho niguo makona mbia maramba maingire mubango-ini kana system-ini. No aria makoretwo ho tutire na thire.
Na ne 2,000
na ne 2,000 o
mundu abatara gwika ate
riu no kibandi o kibandi tu to ni gigukionania wa ciarirwo hindi ino. Na njuga ithu ta abunge kundu guothe ni tuteithiririe thirikari muno tondu thirikari iri ona andu eri o constituency kungi mundu umwe. Riu ugukora ni muheshimiwa ndaruta andu akwa 10 ndama facilitate ndamariho muthenya na ngari yakwa twamatwara tondu magirire ma register county headquarter ta gwitu magirire moke Miharati. Riu ni urona mutumia mukuru aumite kundu gwitagwo Gitambuci kana Turasha agiuka Miharati ona ndangikinya na tutirenda gutigia mundu ona umwe. Turerigirira kugera macifu na andu a nyumba 10 ningi kana igwa kwi mundu wa itura fulani utandikitwo ni cifu tukoria na mundu wa nyumba 10 tondu ni twarite services close to the people ta kuria kibeberi muthenya wa umuthi twikuria marewa muthenya wa ruciu hau ha cifu tugakorwo kuria Gatondo muthenya wa Jumatano tugakorwo haria wa Njohi andu a Mikau maikuruke hau muthenya ucio ungi tugakorwo Gitambuci na andu a Mikau mwena uria ungi maikuruke hau muthenya ucio ungi kuria Makumbi no Gitambuci muthenya ucio ungi Kiambogo no Gitambuci thiku cia muico igiri tucoke county headquarter mundu urakiriga thabari akigere hau.
Nijue na ni uguka ne ngukuha ninge mweke nawe twire gwaku na kugo guthie na mbere no munjitike tondu muthi kwina kigomano kinene tuikara tugithia tucokaga ni undu wa Africa Climate Summit rere kuria KICC na ni ndiragiga akorwo wi thini wa kigomano giki na nduri wa handa muti.
You are in the wrong place.
You are in the wrong place. You are just no go slay wala slay. Akorwo wi kigomano
nduri muti
ono muri wa handa nari ora acid mugorwa ndoni amwe makihurwo na ndora chumeta igakinyoha ndiauga ndarwa ni ndora ni no akondo handite
no ne ciakwa ni ndege
ciaku ni njaga ni kiu ni kigomano uthiete tuo kuria mandathi na chai no reke toba tuthie kuria Africa Climate Summit KICC kuria president ali in attendance.
In the past. Therefore, it is a global responsibility to collectively work out how we do that. Every day this week, we'll be putting our heads together to discuss how to build resilience to climate risks, transition to a low-emission economy, and collaborate on solutions, transforming our economies through a just transition that benefits all sectors of society. Africa, the equal partner in this endeavor, is offering its huge potential. We already know innovation in Africa is astounding. So how can we accelerate this development through green technology and energy? And in doing so, taking the necessary actions to keep in 1.5 within reach. we must address finance. Climate action, just like everything else in life, costs money. Finance should be viewed in the context of mitigation and adaptation, in addition to all of the other things. COP28 will be a critical moment to hold the line on temperature rise at 1.5 degrees Celsius. The world needs to reduce emissions by 43% from 2019 levels by 2030 to achieve this. And the IPCC reports the impacts will be far greater at anything above this, especially in certain parts of the world. So for starters, to hold this off, we immediately need to see delivery of the pledged $100 billion, a doubling of adaptation finance, the substantial replenishment of the Green Climate Fund, a global finance system, public and finance, that is aligned with action and green finance. At COP27, I committed to ensure the Secretariat does all that it can to support parties to deliver on their commitments. I see our role as catching what you, parties, throw and shine light on how you can, together, throw it higher to get it in the basket. I also committed to maximising the opportunities available to us to build collaboration throughout the year between COPs. This Africa Climate Week is a good example on delivering just that. In the past, we used to have only 3 to 4 mandated events associated with the regional climate weeks. Now there are 20. We've been working to cluster them, not just for efficient and resource saving's sake, but also because it is here, in the regions, where catalytic connections are made, and we can supercharge action on the ground. I want to see Africa Climate Week usher in climate action in 3 pivotal fronts. First, it must enable governments to amplify their contributions and commitments. Second, strengthen regional bonds and collaboration. And third, and perhaps most profoundly, empower local transformation so that African nations can come to COP28, which is less than 100 days away, in leading action and ambition. At COP28, the first global stocktake will review our progress on climate action. No, we are not on track. Our response to those findings is a key opportunity to course correct towards a sustainable future. In addition, we must respond to those impacts we know cannot be averted through our approach to loss and damage and the operationalization of the fund and funding arrangements at COP28. The discussions taking place here will inform the global stocktake about the challenges, barriers, and opportunities for climate action and support within the context of Africa. The UNFCCC Secretariat can work with you to identify the opportunities for Africa and facilitate the solutions, and to attain those opportunities. Excellencies, ministers, the world is counting on your continued collaboration and leadership. I thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Next, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is my turn to introduce Her Excellency Josepha Sako, who is African Union Commissioner in charge of agriculture, rural development, blue economy, and sustainable development. Welcome, my sister. You have been extremely instrumental in helping us co-host this summit.
Thank you, Cabinet Minister, to give me the floor. Good morning, every one of you. Let me acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and coordinator of the Committee of Head of State and Government on Climate Change of African Union. His Excellency Azali Assoumani, the President of the Union of Comoros and current African Union Chairperson. His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the Excellencies Head of States and Government from Africa and abroad, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, if he's present, His Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, honorable ministers present, executive head of international organizations, representative of the civil organization, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. On behalf of the African Union Commission, I am pleased to welcome you all to the African Climate Summit and to thank all delegates from Africa and the world at large for setting time aside of your busy schedule to participate at this inaugural African Climate Summit. You are welcome. Karibu. Sejam bem-vindos. Vous êtes le bienvenu. Merci. Your participation is a clear demonstration of our unwavering commitment to collectively shape the future of climate change, climate action in Africa and across the world. We are not isolated. We are following the global agenda, although we are not the polluters. Our responsibility is just 4%, but we cannot isolate because the climate issue, it's really affecting all of us globally, the planet, and we need a sound planet for the next generation. That's why in the continent we are fully committed in this agenda, and I really commend President Ruto for his commitment on this climate agenda. Congratulations, Excellency President. Let me also like to acknowledge the presence of former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Prime Minister of Ethiopia. You're welcome to this meeting. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to express our sincere gratitude to the government and people of Kenya for the warm reception and hospitality accorded to all the delegation since their arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. I would also like to commend the organizers from the different ministries and partners organizations under the leadership and strategic guidance of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, that worked around the clock on the technical and logistical arrangement required for a successful summit. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to submit to you that climate change is a pandemic in Africa and is responsible for more lives and economic distress. Climate change is resulting in an increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events that causes disasters with compounding effects because they do not allow us to recover before another disaster strikes again. What are we witnessing is the situation whereby governments are abandoning development and concentrating their resources in responding to climate-related disasters without building resilience. We know that many African governments, they are using at least 2% of their budget to invest on the disasters, on adaptation programs in the continent. In our continent. Research tells us that some of the African member states are spending up to 50% of their GDP per year in response to climate-induced disasters. The economic losses resulting from climate change stand at more than 5% of the annual GDP for the continent. The bottom line is that the cost of climate change in Africa is too high for us. We know for sure that crying for the promised resources by the developed countries' parties has not yielded tangible results, and even the $100 billion that you promised during the during the Paris Agreement, COP21, up to now, we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen anything. That was the pledge in 2009 to be accessible from 2022. We are in 2023. We haven't seen anything. Please, partners, come and honor your pledge. Has not been reached to Africa. This is despite being their obligation due to their historic responsibility for climate change in line with the Convention and the Paris Agreement. We also know that the cost of addressing climate change is also skyrocketing. For example, the revise of our NDCs for Africa will require an estimated $3 trillion of investment, US dollar investment, to implement, in addition to all the climate action, including NABs. Africa has refused to wait and die due to climate change. We shall continue to pursue them to honor their obligation, but at the same time, we shall proceed with our own initiatives aimed at building resilience in Africa. I must confess that at the African Union Commission, we are enjoying support for some of our development partners, and so are some of the member states. However, Africa needs to move from a donor-recipient relationship to that built around investment, as that it is the pathway to reaping development aspiration of our continent, the Africa we all want. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the primary goal of this summit is to propel our collective efforts on climate change and sustainable development forward. The fundamental driver of success for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and these must be accompanied by the strengthening of the ability of the African countries to mobilize their own resources, their own domestic resources. And I believe in Africa we can do it. We have the resources. Let us start allocating the resources on the environmental agenda when we are doing our national budget. I believe that we have this capacity. So the fundamental driver of this success, as I say, for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and those must be accompanied by strengthening of the ability of the African country to mobilize our own resources, build on the foundation of solid and inclusive economic growth. As a continent, previous growth models have been predicated largely on the sheep production and export of African raw material with a minimal value addition. We have to start adding value and create jobs for our youth and our women. A continuation of this trajectory will undoubtedly reinforce Africa's vulnerability. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the African continent remains a key player in charting the way forward towards a low-carbon future, despite being the least contributor and yet highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. However, our strength lies in our unity and the fact that we are a continent that is vibrant, fast-growing, useful, young population, energy, and diversity. Our solution for African climate change are rooted in large-scale investment in climate resilience centered on energy access to drive sustainable industrialization. This represents one of the fastest drivers for poverty reduction, while also fundamentally changing the nature of Africa's economic model with large-scale investment in a sustainable value chain. To this end, we continue to put policy framework in place to support the implementation of climate action. Such frameworks include the African Union Climate Change and Resilience Development Strategy and Action Plan. This was adopted by our head of state. We are not here to invent the wheel. The wheel exists. If you want to partner with us, this is what our head of state adopted, and I invite partners to really align any investment in Africa with this important strategic action on climate change. We didn't have it, but we support of some partners, even the EU, we were able to elaborate and approve it. So I call upon all the partners and our member states to align on this, so that we are not trying to multiplicate or duplicate what already exists in the continent. The second strategy, it is the Continental Green Recovery Action Plan and the integrated strategy on meteorology. So these instruments are strategic and they exist. So if at all we want to tackle all the issues of the challenges of climate change, the tools are there. I'm just inviting investment. Let us find a mechanism where our member state can have access to these capitals, financing resources, so that we can go ahead. We have already done our homework with these tools that was approved. As I conclude, I would like to emphasize the following: that Africa's potential is fostering its sustainable development. Its great green transformation must be designed and led by African countries and African institutions, and should be centered on the mobilization of new and additional resources that can be deployed urgently. 2, that Africa's energy transition must be defined. My colleague is here. She's going to share with us how is she doing as a commissioner of this important department, which is the Department of Infrastructure, honed and led by African for it to be just and equitable. 3, we need to structurally alter the relationship of African economy within the global economy and reduce the impact of exogenous shocks by building sustainable value chain. This will allow a focus on people and on ensuring the connection between the citizens of Africa and its immense natural health. In this process, we are determined not to be bystander in this, but to lead by doing. Nevertheless, as a continent, we will continue to hold our partners accountable to the promise they made to us. 4, together we aim to elevate the discourse surrounding climate change and rely support for a financial architecture specifically tailored by Africa, while also emphasizing our continent's abundant resources and the resilience as we accelerate our transition towards a climate resilient future. 5th, as this green transformation is built on this shared determination, I urge us to strongly embrace our collective strengths towards this cause. This summit will be just one step of many towards attaining our objective, which is our Agenda 2063. 6th, and lastly, we will count on the support of partners present here today, as well all relevant stakeholders, to support the implementation of the summit's outcome. As the African Union Commission, we remain determined and committed to work with member states in addressing climate change, including the implementation of the outcome of this summit, which is the Nairobi Declaration. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention and look forward for a fruitful deliberation. Asante sana, muito obrigada, muitas gracias, merci beaucoup, shukran.
Good job, Your Excellency, the Swahili. Your Excellency, colleague ministers, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the apex of the opening session of today's ministerial segment of the Africa Climate Summit. And Excellencies, allow me to remind my colleague ministers that we have a very busy day ahead of us. As per the program, we have 3 breakaway rooms, Lenana, Savo, Abadeas, and we shall be guided through that section immediately after the official opening. Allow me, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Kenya, to thank you most profusely for accepting to grace this ministerial segment to flag us off to a very busy day. And without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome His Excellency President William Ruto to make his remarks. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's take our seats. Thank you very much. Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Nairobi. It's called the green city in the sun. Welcome to Kenya, and welcome to the Africa Climate Summit. I have welcomed you to this great city on behalf of the people and government of Kenya to this meeting that is co-hosted by the Africa Union and the government of Kenya. Let me give you a bit of information that will make it easy to find your way around. Nairobi is a very interesting city. On one side, there is a full canopy forest, and on the other side, we have a wildlife national park. We keep the wildlife in the park because we have a fence. But sometimes, as nature would be, they break away from the fence. So while you are doing your morning walk, you might encounter a lion. Please be careful. It is not tamed, it is wild. Let me also inform you that Nairobi is the home of the United Nations Environmental Programme, the only UN agency headquarters in the global south. So, discussing matters environment, you are in the correct city. And if you need any referencing, the UNEP is right here. Let me also volunteer some additional information that Kenya, a few kilometers from where you are seated, scientists, including myself as a scientist, discovered and located the earliest remains of man on Earth. In other words, this is where humanity began. Before you guys went all over the place, in Europe and America and Asia and the rest of our continent, this is where we all began. And therefore, allow me to welcome you home. And in a few months, we are having a conversation as Kenyans. In a few months, we are seriously considering abolishing any visa requirement because it is unfair to ask anybody coming home for visa. I welcome all the delegates who responded positively to Africa's call to gather at this inaugural Africa Summit. In order for us to imagine, design, and then build a future of prosperity for Africa and the world, you have just stepped into, let me take that again. You have not just stepped into a conference hall. You have entered the future. A future ripe with potential, driven by global partnerships committed to African prosperity, inclusive growth, and a livable planet for all of us. Clearly, therefore, this is no ordinary summit. We are not here just to talk about Africa or climate change in the usual way, which often accentuates our divisions. You all remember the North versus South, developed versus developing, polluters versus victims, and the whole of that conversation. And even within our own government, sometimes we have conversations around economic development, so badly needed for us to achieve stable and dignified livelihoods, and is often cast as a trade-off with environmental stewardship as if they are mutually exclusive, when in actual fact they are positively reinforcing. Let me be clear, these conversations are necessary. Africa's carbon footprint remains small, but the human toll of climate change is disproportionately high. The urgency to address loss and damage and to configure appropriate financial mechanisms for resilience grows with each extreme weather event and each bout of climate-induced insecurity. A complex interplay of needs and responsibilities is a daily challenge, but it should not lead to a deadlock. We must be alert to the fact that they can sometimes blind us to the bigger picture. Delivering prosperity and well-being for Africa's growing population without pushing the world deeper into climate disaster is not just an abstract proposition or a mere wishful thinking. It is a real possibility proven by science and affirmed by emerging experience. An opportunity-oriented focus on climate action is the engine for propelling Africa into a realm of stability and prosperity, elevating us to middle-income status and beyond. This context is precisely what sets this climate summit apart from others. It aims to unite us across neighborhoods, across sectors, across institutions, local or international, across country borders, across continents, and across generations. It is because we all have a shared stake in the Earth's ability to sustain life that we must envision together a future that embraces the values of equality, human security, and shared prosperity. Africa possesses all the necessary conditions to realize this future. Our foremost asset is our young and growing young people and workforce, educated, skilled, and motivated to pursue industry, innovation, and enterprise. And we saw them here speak ably this morning. And I congratulate the young people who've been here for the last 3 days, and they have done a tremendous job in the Youth Summit. We have ample renewable energy potential as well, and the natural assets and resources to green our own consumption, but also to meaningfully contribute to decarbonization of the global economy. We must see in green growth not just a climate imperative, but also a fountain of multi-billion-dollar economic opportunities that Africa and the world is primed to capitalize. We are brought together by a clear understanding and deep concern about the inadequacy of our present means in terms of institutions and available finances to deal effectively with the magnitude of our collective threats and challenges. But we will not shy away from the difficult conversations and uncomfortable realities that must be addressed to achieve meaningful change. Policy regulations, taxation, trade, and climate justice will all be scrutinized in national, regional, global contexts. Yet, the way we frame these discussions matters. I invite all of us to adopt opportunity lens as we navigate these complex dialogues. For a very long time, we have looked at this as a problem. It is time we flipped and looked at it from the other side. There are opportunities, immense opportunities as well. And that is why we are not here to catalogue grievances and list problems. We are here to scrutinize ideas, assess perspectives, so that we can unlock solutions. The very format of this summit has been designed to facilitate such engagement. Over the next 3 days, be ready to be challenged in this dynamic ecosystem of dialogue and discovery. African and global leaders, innovation trailblazers, experts, investors, and captains of industry are here to explore the opportunities, tackle the barriers, and scale up solutions. While I cannot encapsulate the breadth and depth of all our program within my opening remarks, allow me to outline the overarching theme, which is the unparalleled opportunity that climate action represents for Africa. As you are aware, the climate conversation began 31 years ago in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. But this is the first African summit 31 years later. When my colleagues agreed, in the Africa Union that is, agreed to my offer to host this climate summit, it was clear to me that this inaugural summit is going to be the stepping stone to the ultimate resolution of this challenge. The reason why possibly we haven't made much progress is because Africa had not consolidated and assembled its ideas and brought them to the table. I am confident that now going forward, we have all what it takes to create a win-win outcome out of this very intense conversation about climate change. This occasion summons us to contemplate the full range of possibilities that can be unleashed by directing investment and appropriate technology to actualize our continent's abundant resource endowments. Let us look, for example, at food production and the protection and expansion of our invaluable natural carbon sinks, which stand at the intersection of our environment and ecology on one end and economic opportunities on the other end. Since 1961, Africa has witnessed a 1/3 reduction in agricultural productivity due to climate change, a stark reminder of the urgent need for adaptation. Yet, much of the world is just waking up to the merits of restorative agriculture, a practice that already resonates with African farming practices. By building on the wealth of indigenous knowledge, we can scale, enhance, and even monetize our agricultural systems. This enables us to unlock the huge potential in our agricultural land assets, representing 2/3 of the world's uncultivated, underutilized, arable land to feed our growing populations, and to do so in harmony with our invaluable natural carbon sinks. Additionally, the restoration and expansion of Africa's natural carbon sinks are not just an environmental imperative. In fact, they are an unparalleled economic gold mine. They have the potential to absorb millions of tons of CO2 annually, which should translate into billions of dollars if we were living in a fair world, improve livelihoods and millions of opportunities across this continent. And I was having a conversation yesterday about a banker of one of the big multinational banks, and he was telling me about Africa's GDP. And GDP is about assets, it's about what you have. We have the carbon sinks that serves the world, cleans our environment, acts as sequestration of carbon that is produced by others. But we get nothing for it. It's not anywhere in our balance sheet. Everybody's assets are in their balance sheet. Some of ours are not in that balance sheet. The day we put our doesn't count for much, but we do it anyway because we love this world, because it's our home. And that is why the conversation of North versus South must come to an end. Who did what is not a conversation that we have the luxury to engage in, because when the apocalypse happens, it will happen for all of us, for the entire humanity. Let me say this. We do this, and all of this comes while safeguarding our biodiversity. We are careful to make sure that that's in place. Our renewable energy resources are not just environmental necessity. They are the ultimate catalyst of radical socio-economic prosperity. They can fuel sustainable development, drive economic growth, create jobs, and also uplift millions from energy poverty, all while reducing our carbon footprint continentally and globally. The possibilities are not just promising. They are transformative. Africa can power all our energy needs with renewable resources. The continent has enough potential to be entirely self-sufficient with the mixture of wind, solar, geothermal, sustainable biomass, and hydropower. In Africa, we can be a green industrial hub that helps other regions achieve their net zero strategies by 2050. In other words, what I'm saying is unlocking the renewable resources that we have in our continent is not only good for Africa, it is good for the rest of the world. Because we not only are driving our own growth, but we are ready to share these resources with the rest of the world, and by doing so, we will assist the rest of the world in ensuring that we move towards the net zero target that we all set for ourselves. And for Africa renewable resources, it is not just the volume, but also the non-seasonality of our renewable energy that stands out. The nearly year-round sunshine makes Africa's solar potential particularly unique, perfectly suited to industrial energy demands, something that is challenging in other areas, especially in temperate climates. Kenya, for example, serves as a good example of what is possible. Our national grid currently operates at 3 gigawatts, with 93% of that power being renewable. Our ambition is audacious yet achievable: 100% renewable by 2030 and a 100 gigawatt grid entirely renewable by 2040. A serious challenge in bridging the investment gap in order to enable the continent meet its energy needs is the creation of demand on sufficient scale to provide incentives for appropriate private investment in energy infrastructure development. Industrial energy at scale is therefore necessary to anchor energy demand as a means of tackling the widespread energy poverty still prevalent across our continent. The numbers are stark. Nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity. Another 150 million grapple with unreliable power. And almost 1 billion have no access to clean cooking energy. But the abundance of our renewable resources, the possibilities offered by new technologies, and opportunities created by new climate financing offers enormous possibilities for us. We have the capability to provide reliable and cost-effective energy access to all Africans by 2030. The green transformation of both production and consumption is not optional. It is an imperative. The global demand for such solution is already gaining momentum. Our strategic proximity to substantial reserves of metal and minerals necessary for the global energy transition makes Africa an attractive candidate to become a global hub in green industrial supply chain, from refining metals and minerals to constructing and assembling electric motor vehicles, batteries, and other components. Let me invite you to this unprecedented geo-economic opportunity for Africa. We are already key players in the extraction of these minerals, but much of the higher value addition, smelting, refining, assembly, and even the production of electric motor vehicles happens elsewhere. Let's put some numbers to add perspective to what I'm saying. By 2025, the mining of battery critical minerals, nickel, lithium, cobalt, is estimated to generate some $11 billion in value. If we take the next step and engage in value-added activities like refining these minerals into industrial-grade metals, that value could triple to $50 billion. And if we consider the end-to-end value chain for electric vehicles, including the battery pack and all other components, the market value skyrockets to an astonishing $7 trillion. That is a trajectory. What today we are selling for $11 billion could be $7 trillion if we engage in the